Hi, this is John Maggiore with Maggiore on Bowie.com. A few days ago, I posted a video blog entry intended to answer a simple question. What are Bowie's Leon sessions and the Leon suites that came from them? To answer this question, I turned to my friend, musician and educator Marc Lowe, with whom I have collaborated before on this blog. The idea was to record a concise, easily digestible interview of no more than 10 minutes in length. As usual, though, Marc Lowe and I cannot limit ourselves to talking about anything for only 10 minutes. What follows is the rest of that conversation. If you missed the first video and you already know what the Leon sessions are, you could watch this one on its own. I'll include a link if you want to see the first video. This one begins rather abruptly. After this introduction, Marc jumps right into it. Some of Bowie's music overlays the discussion, adding a frenetic dimension to what would otherwise be a normal, if energetic, conversation. You've been warned. And with that, here I am with Marc Lowe discussing the Leon sessions.
Who's to say?
Right.
Actually, the EPK, which you can see on YouTube, does show them recording bits of songs that made the Outside album. And I do believe that there were bits, but they went back into the studio, and I'll get back to your question, but they did go back into the studio January, February of 95, I believe, to record some of the songs that were made for Outside to be a bit more commercial. Now, how is it different from the Gooster and Young Americans? Because those are songs.
Yeah.
So they're songs, they're 5-minute songs, 6-minute songs. The Leon Suites are not songs. They're extended collages of improvisations and songs and medleys of things. Not medleys exactly, but so in terms of the music, let's get away from the segs that I've mentioned. You asked me the other part. In terms of the music in the suites themselves, because I've listened to them so many times. For example, I Am With Name, which is only like maybe 2 or 3 minutes and has a little seg with Ramona A. Stone talking on the album. I Am With Name on the Leon Suites is like 20-some minutes.
Right.
And it starts off very similar. I am with name, I am Ramona A. And she'll say, if you've heard the Outside album, it actually starts with that, but then it goes off on tangents. And he starts doing this he said, she said, tell him, he said, get it, and you hear he's just having this crazy stuff. And then it goes into a totally different thing that has nothing to do with I Am With Name. Mike Carson's piano comes in and it goes in another direction. So I'm wondering about the suites, because what I do think, I was thinking about this today because we had this interview coming up, it may be in fact that somebody edited them together as suites.
Yeah.
I do this myself because and this isn't to talk about how I was influenced by it, that's another thing, but you can take bits, say you recorded this bit, you recorded this bit, and you recorded this bit. You can mix them together and fade them and do something to make them sound connected. And I think that's probably what the suites are, because they had 20-some hours of sessions. And what Bowie says, if there was more time, I'd read what he said. But he says, I don't have time. This is actually, I'm going to read it, because if I have a minute here, this is what he's asked a question. And this guy asks him a question on BowieNet. It was in 2000, October 2000. And someone says, David, I heard there was enough material from the Outside recording sessions to compile a 4-CD set. Will you ever? And Bowie says, okay, this is the last question on the Outside sessions. I'm actually looking at the last question. But I think you underestimate the amount of work we put in. We meaning Brian Eno and the members. We have almost 27 hours of tapes. Work that out into CDs, something like 24 CDs. And I'm having trouble putting the second one together, meaning the follow-up to Outside, No Rest for the Wicked. And someone else asks about To Contamination. He says, we were talking about this the other week. This is in 2000. And he says, I hope we can begin this after the Visconti album, which ended up being Heathen, by the way. I think the most daunting aspect of Contamination, other than the itching, is the fact that there are hours and hours and hours of sifting to do through the tapes we recorded, some of them going back to 1994. So the suites are only 70 minutes, so he's saying we have 20-some hours and I need to take time out to go through the tapes and edit them and figure out what to use and how and when. And so that was going to become the basis for To Contamination.
Yeah.
But he never had time, and To Contamination never happened. Now, I have one other thing I really do want to share with you and with the viewers. I'm sure you have other questions, but this is very interesting. Brian Eno reveals ill-fated plans to revisit Outside Era with David Bowie. This was published after Bowie's death. Eno was interviewed for the BBC, and he says, I'll just keep it short, but he says, about a year ago, we, meaning I, Brian Eno, and David Bowie, we started talking about Outside, the last album we worked on together. We both liked that album a lot and felt that it had fallen through the cracks. We talked about revisiting it, taking it somewhere new. I was looking forward to that. And then the last thing he says is, I received an email from him 7 days ago. It was funny as always and as surreal, looping through word games and illusions and all the usual stuff we did. It ended with this sentence, quote, "Thank you for our good times, Brian. They will never rot." And it was signed Dawn. And then he says, I realize now he was saying goodbye. So Bowie, at the end of his life, about a year before he was doing Black Star, and then a year before he died, he was doing Lazarus the play. And he was talking to Brian about reviving Outside and following it up, because they never did in the 90s. Yeah. The original plan was by 1999, actually the eve of 2000, they were going to publish the final part, Afrikaans.
So that sets up my last question. But I just want to make it crystal clear to anybody who's watching this.
Yes.
The Leon Suites, which you can see on YouTube and elsewhere,
yeah,
they are very, very different than the album One Outside.
Yes,
right. There are minutes of overlap, mostly in what's on One Outside as the segues. You call them the segs, right? That's the overlap. Other than that, those 70 minutes that are on YouTube, the vast majority of that is very different than what's on One Outside.
Yes,
right?
Musically, but the characters and the themes are in Leon sessions, and actually they're more fleshed out in some ways. But and this again, if we have a longer talk or we talk about this again, there's more to say, because the piece he wrote for Q, which are the liner notes, tells the nonlinear story.
Yeah,
I could even the literary side and the other references, maybe another talk we could do that, because all of that, like a lot of that stuff comes out in the Leon sessions, and some of those bits you can kind of find in Outside. So if you are a detective like Nathan Adler, right, and you want to go looking for clues, because it's all fragmented, right? And that's the point of it, is that it's nonlinear, right? It's fragmented, right. It's postmodern or post-postmodern, whatever you want to call, and there are literary precedents for that I won't talk about now, because that'll get too, we don't have time. But you could, if you want to be a detective and sniff out the clues, I think you could find more connections between Leon and Outside than just the segs or segs, the characters, and the musical bits that are similar. Yeah. One other thing I'll say, let me quickly, Nothing to Be Desired was a B-side. It's about 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, very short, on, I think it was on one of the, I think it was the US single of Heart's Filthy Lesson, if I'm remembering that correctly, from the 90s. I owned it. Nothing to Be Desired. It's like a 2.5, 3 minute. It fades in, it fades out. That's plucked right from the Leon Suites. And they just faded it out. So there are bits from that even could be taken and made into songs that were similar. The Enemy is Fragile is another piece on the Leon sessions that could be clipped out as a song. Reeves Gabrels had talked about that on a talk thing on one of the sites years ago I read, and he was saying, oh, that's The Enemy Was Fragile. You know, I mean, that could be released as a single, as the Lost Bowie single. You know, it could have fit perfectly on Outside. So there's a lot of things that could come from that.
My final question, because I think we've established what the Leon Suites are and what the Leon sessions were.
Yeah.
There's a lot of material that is out there that a lot of people haven't heard, that's very different, thematically similar, but very different than what has been officially released. Do you think there's any chance that any version of the Leon Suites will get an official release?
I've been hoping for years it would, because in addition to the 70 minutes that we have, and who knows, the other thing I'm curious about, John, is who compiled what we are calling and what we can hear as the Leon Suites.
Yeah.
Is leaked, because it's not official. It's leaked.
Yeah.
So somebody was able to leak it. And actually, there's another thing, again, we don't have much time, but let me just say, originally what was leaked was not what we have now. What was leaked was piecemeal, and it wasn't the whole thing. And there were the person, and I won't go into it. I don't even remember the name he was using. He was running kind of like a bootleg thing, and he was releasing live stuff. And one day out of nowhere, it was leaked online, and it was just bits this person had leaked like as a taster, and parts of it were like cut in the middle, so you didn't even get the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then something like 10 years later, what we now know, what we're talking about is the 70 minutes, the Leon suites, which have a nice flow, and they're complete as 3 separate suites, which is what they are. Came out later, right? So first we got the piecemeal bits, which were just kind of, and they had repetitions of things, but they had missing pieces, very much like the Outside Saga. It had gaps in it. The second thing we got was Leon Suites as a 70-minute, kind of nice, little bit nicer. We had sort of a complete thing. But if what Bowie says is true, there's 20 some hours of material. Obviously, they can't release all of it. It has to be sifted through, as he said, which he never had the chance to sift through it because he was busy with this, that, the other. Then he got ill. He was touring. He did this. He did that. He wanted to revisit it. And unfortunately, he passed on before he had a chance. So if he had lived longer, my guess is that he would have gone back and done more. And I don't know, if he would have gone through the suites themselves, and maybe some of that would have been kind of done. So to answer your question, I hope so. I hope someone out there has the fortitude, the wherewithal, the fortitude, and the intelligence to realize that there's all this great lost Bowie so-called, material in the vaults that no one has heard, including me, you, and I mean, not no one in the world, but hardly anyone has access. So, Reeves Gabrels didn't have access to that. And I remember him writing because, the labels own the stuff, right? So when it was leaked, he was like, oh, what do you have? Maybe we can trade files, maybe he has something, but not the whole thing. So who would be able to go into the vaults and pull that out? Whoever's got the rights to it, whoever's got the money for it. But no one's releasing it. I complained about this with you on publicly talking about before, is that they release like 10 albums of 60s material we've all heard in 10 different versions. We get all these live albums of stuff that we could kind of hear on YouTube or elsewhere. Where are the Leon sessions or the Leon tapes that we haven't heard? Even the nice little suites package for 70 minutes with liner notes and a remaster would be nice. But I'm hoping we can get more because there's lots out there apparently that no one's heard, hardly anyone. I haven't. So that's what I'll say.